Okay.
Hi, BWW community. It's Michelle Jackson here with April Young. And April is, wow, and a dynamic writer who is here to talk to us a little bit about publishing and marketing, but we also are here to learn about her work. Um, this is a book that I haven't read it yet, but I wanted to bring her on because we were talking on the page about the publishing process. And April published her book through self-publishing. I know a lot of people on the page are interested in self-publishing. I self-publish my books as well. And so we wanted to talk to an author from the BWW community that has self-published successfully. She's on her second book, and April's going to talk to us, tell us about herself, and then she's going to tell us about her work. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that inspired her. And then we're going to get really into the publishing process and learn about how she published, how she self-published, how she did her cover, and some of the things that she's using to market the book. So April, thank you so much for joining me today. And like I said, tell us about yourself and tell us about your books.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me. I am April Young. I am a wife, a God-filled, spirit-led woman wife. I have two adult children, and I also have two grandchildren. And I like to spend my time writing. I love to do that. If I'm not writing a book or a manuscript, I'm also writing a play. And so that's my passion. That's my heart. And so if I never got paid a dime to write, I would still write. That's how much I love it. And so I have been married to my husband, Michael, for 12 years now, 12 wonderful years. And so I just enjoy networking and meeting other people. And I also enjoy cooking. And he's an actual certified chef. So
Nice.
I like to eat.
That is great. That is great. Tell us about your book. So you've got two books, one
Yes.
that you recently published, which is a memoir, and
Hmm.
the other is called How to Be a God Wife. Not a good wife,
Yeah.
but a God wife. And we're going to
Yes.
focus
Yes.
a lot of our questions on that book because it was
Mhm.
published a while back. And so you have somewhat of a history that you could share with us about the publishing and the marketing. But let's start with how do you, why do I need to be a God wife? Tell me that first and foremost.
Okay. A God wife is one who keeps God as the center, and she has an intimate relationship with Him, and she listens to His voice, and not necessarily the voice that she wants to heed to. Marriage is not an easy thing, but it's a beautiful thing as well. And so when I wrote How to Be a God Wife, it was on my heart because there was so many divorces in the church. And I just found that was just phenomenal. I could not believe at the rate of divorce that was happening in the church. And so when I got the title, when the Lord gave me the title, at first I didn't know what to do with it or what He wanted me to do. So I began to, as I sought Him in prayer, He began to give me different things and different insights for each chapter that He gave me. And so it's not just, I know the title says How to Be a God Wife, not just a good wife. It's not just an instructional book. It's more so an inspirational book. And so I wanted to speak to the heart of women to let them know that sometimes we feel like we just want to give up, we want to give in, and we want to walk out the marriage. And it could be something where, if we allow God to speak to us and minister to us, He can actually show us what is it we need to do as wives for our husbands and what have you. So that was very important for me to do that. And then not only that, when He gave me the book, I know it says How to Be a God Wife. He also gave me a chapter in the book for single women, and it's note to single ladies how to walk in your divine wholeness.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily have to have a man to complete you, but when you are complete in Christ, you're already complete when you come into that relationship.
Mhm.
So that was one of the things that was important. And there's a prayer after every chapter that was also important to me as well.
When I think about my own, when I think about my own life, the hard times that I've gone through, there's always been a book that I turned to. I remember coming out of college and going through things, and I turned to T.D. Jakes, and I would read Joyce Meyer's. Battlefield of the Mind was like blew me away that Joyce Myers wrote. I
Yeah.
remember reading Stormy or Martin when I first got married.
Yes.
the prayers of a praying mother, a praying father. There's always, in my life, there's always been something that I read to help me overcome that challenge. So when you decided to write this book, I'm assuming this was a faith journey for you, right? This
Yes.
was God saying, write this book. So I always would say to myself, what made Joyce write? What made Stormy write this book? Um, so tell me, what was that moment like when you knew you had to write this book? And and very specifically, was there somebody that you were writing it for? Were you writing it for yourself, or were you writing it for a particular person or a particular group of people? I know it was for women, but was there
Mm-hmm.
something more that really drove you to do this?
I think when for me, whenever he gives me something, and I'm not going to say if I try to resist or I say, okay, I hear you, God, but then I don't move on it quickly, I don't have any rest.
Hmm.
I don't have any peace until I begin to pick up that pen and write. Because I usually handwrite things out sometimes. It just depends on what's going on. So I began to handwrite out different things that he wanted me to do. And it was just to a certain group of people, basically women in the church in the beginning. But
Hmm.
then as I got to write further along, it wasn't just for that woman in the church, it was for every woman. And so it began to minister to me.
Hmm.
And there's a testimony that I do give in the book. And, I thank God for obedience. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And it talks about when my husband was in the kitchen, he had just come out of the kitchen. And I was in the bed. I had gotten myself all ready for bed. And I had just gotten my comfortable place in the bed. And he comes in and he says, "Oh, babe, can you go get me a glass of water?" And I'm like, okay. This man sees I'm in the bed. He just came out of the kitchen, but he wants a glass of water. Okay. So there's a moment of aha. Do I get an attitude, or do I have the attitude of submission? And that's one of the titles in my book, the other S word. And people take submission a whole different spectrum, and it's like, oh my God, whatever. And I learned in that writing about that testimony let me know that marriage is just not one-sided. It's just not about me. It's not about my feelings. And the ultimate goal for my husband was he wanted to bless me when I went in the kitchen. When I went in the kitchen to get it, I got up, got the glass, went to go get the glass of water, and there were two gifts on the counter
Hmm.
and two cards. Now, suppose I had taken the wrong attitude and told him go get his own glass of water. I'm tired. You know, I didn't do that. And I thank God I didn't do it because I would have missed out on the blessing. And even in that right there lets me know that sometimes God will give us an instruction and have us to do something. And we can either be obedient and do it and be blessed by it, or be disobedient and miss the blessing.
Hmm.
It ministered to me as I wrote the book on different things he had me reflect on. So it
Beautiful.
ministered to myself.
Absolutely. That is so beautiful. I think I did mention to you before we started talking, I've been married. It'll be 18 years in September. And there are so many lessons in this marriage life. Something that we learned early on was that marriage was a covenant and not a contract. And
Yes.
so, and understanding what that meant, was just so significant in this process of getting through these 18 years, was that, what we were learning was that when one person does something doesn't mean that you have to do something of equal amount or equal value. So, the contract is I cook, you wash the dishes.
Hmm.
Covenant is I cook and I may wash the dishes too, because you may have something else to do, and that's just what I'm going to do to make sure that we get beyond this point. Now, dishwashing is a simple way of saying it, but if you run your marriage that way, as it is a covenant and not a contract, you get so much further. So when your
Yeah.
husband said, "Can I get that? Will you get me a glass of water?" If you would have been like, "You need to get that water yourself. I got you the water last time." That's a contract.
That's a contract.
That's the contract. I've done enough. I'm done. But the
Hmm.
covenant is, no, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna help. I'm gonna do what I can do. And if you call that submissiveness, then call it submissiveness. But in a good marriage, you have to learn how to have that covenant with each other. And so I love what you said. That is excellent. And I encourage everyone to go out and get your book, because marriage is something that it's a everyday, you learn something new about yourself, you
Yes.
learn something new about the person that you're with every single day. It doesn't stop. It's a every day is a learning process, but it's a
Yes.
beautiful thing. And I'm so happy to know that you have taken the time to put something on paper to memorialize what you're feeling so that we can learn from you. So that is excellent. That is absolutely excellent. And I encourage everyone to go out and pick up your book. I really do. Let's talk about the publishing and the marketing.
Okay.
So, how did you publish your book?
Okay. After I did some research and I had narrowed it down finally to two publishing companies, and with prayer, I decided on the one that I went with, which was Zulon Press. And I chose that one because not only was I was inspired to choose that one, but because of the process in which they take you through. This was my first time publishing. There were a lot of things I was still learning. And so when I contacted the representative and she talked with me for a little bit, she, let me know how they would take me through the process. And I like the fact that if I had a question about anything, at any time I needed to call them for something, they were available. They were in constant contact with me via email, telephone calls, and I liked that. And I needed that because it was the first time for me. And so when I sent in my transcript, of course, they do a review. And so they give you the positive feedback in reference to your manuscript, and they give you some things that you need to work on, which I found was good. It wasn't just about me turning in a manuscript for them to say, okay, we'll take it just so they can get my money, because it does, there is a fee for that.
Yes.
And so it's not cheap. And so I wanted to make sure that I was not only getting my money's worth, but I was getting something that was going to be a quality. And that's very important. That was one of the things I learned from Miles Monroe, is that when you publish a book, there are many people who go through self-publishing, but the quality of the book is not there. It's like he said, you can tell the difference between a book that has been published well and then a book that has been just put together or just bound together for sale or whatever. And so I didn't want that. And so I had also known the woman that the woman that had done my foreword, Dr. Moss. She also had her books published there. She had several books published there, so I also talked with her to find out what type of representation Zulon had. And so with conferring with her and looking at the type of quality that her book was, I knew that it was confirmed that I was going with the right publishing company, and that's very important. I also looked up reviews on publishing companies. If there were a lot of negative reviews, they didn't do the quality wasn't there, the customer satisfaction was not there, then I knew that that was not the company for me. So you have to do your research. It's very important. You just can't say, I'm going to go with this publishing company because Sally went with them and they did all right for her. You have to know what's fit for you and what's going to work for you. And so I knew that Zulon was going to be one of the companies, be the company for me when I published.
I considered Zulon when I published my first book as well. I self-published. I went through a company called Exebris, and I did not seek a publisher or an agent. Did you do any of that? Did you go out and
No.
try to pitch? Okay, I did not either. And I took a different route with the second book. I actually published it using Amazon, and I had a lot more control over things. The struggle I had with going through Exebris, which was more of a print-on-demand company, which is somewhat like the company you use, is
Mm-hmm.
that I did not get a chance to set my own price for my book. And I priced my
Ah.
because of the prices that they set, it priced my book out of market in many ways. It was just extremely high
Mm-hmm.
online. I mean, they did a fantastic job of laying it out. They did a fantastic job of, everything. The cover was dynamic, but it was a book that was about 156 pages, and it was on the market for like $19. And when I think
Mm-hmm.
about that, I think that was one of the biggest challenges that I had with working with this company. So, were you able to have any control over the price of your book when you put it out?
No, I didn't have the control over it, but what they did offer for me is usually when you have your book published, they have the price printed on the back of it,
Mm-hmm.
so you know what it costs. And Zulon gives you space to say, for instance, the book is 15. And if I go to a conference, I may want to charge 16 or 17, maybe $18 for the book. It just depends. It gives you a little bit more flexibility on what you want to charge. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
nothing ridiculous. I mean, for someone to charge you, say, for instance, I want to charge for a 156-page book, $25, $30. Of course, that's outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
But they do give you the flexibility of not putting the price point on the back of the book. So if you were to go to a conference and you want to be able to have, if I wanted to sell both my books, one of each, the Daughter of Thunder and Godwife, and I want to do a package deal, I'm able to have the flexibility to do that. If I want to put it on a lesser price or sell for two or whatever, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, I didn't have any control over that. But you mentioned Amazon, and so with my second book, I also did with Zulon, but my husband and I have been doing research, and we've been getting some feedback in reference to Amazon because I did understand that you do have more control
Mm-hmm.
over the things that you can't do. So that was something that we did discuss once after Daughter of Thunder was published.
I enjoyed the process with Amazon, to be honest with you. I, you know, when you look at your royalty amounts, it's pretty standard, the amount that you're going to get, but what I do like about Amazon is that I was able to upload my own book. I can go in and make any changes that will go in immediately. Even to this day, I can change things on my ebook. If I find there's a corrections that's needed, I can do that. I created my own cover. I did a lot of things myself, and then I set my price at, I think I'm selling for, well, I know I'm selling for $10 on Amazon. And what I was really interested in, though, with the Amazon package was that it could sell internationally. That was something that was very interesting to me. But there are so many ways to publish a book. Like, there's so many ways. It's just, there's just countless different things that you can do these days that will make a difference. And allow you to publish. And so it's a good thing that we as writers have more options
Mhm.
to how we want
Yes.
to do this. And so, I'm glad to hear that you had a really good experience. A lot of the writers that I talk to have good experiences. Now,
Mhm.
there are one of the things that I've learned more and more that we all seem to and somewhat struggle with is the idea of marketing. Like, what is it, did your company give you any tools around marketing that you think were exceptional or really stood out? Or do you think that was one of the areas that could have been a bit stronger?
Uh, I think it could have been a little bit stronger. I think for them, uh, as far as marketing, they tell you they'll send you emails and say, "Hey, we can do this in marketing," but of course, there's a fee that's incurred with it. But I actually have someone who has been doing a phenomenal job marketing for me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still a learning process. Even with the second book, we're learning different things every day, and that's my husband. And so he he is my manager, my marketing person. I do have a publicist, however. I do have a publicist as well. But my husband is just fine. And as a matter of fact, the cover that on Daughter of Thunder,
Mm-hmm.
my husband did that.
That's dynamic. Great.
So he is my number one fan. He is my cheerleader, but he's the one to say, "Hey, we got to do this, and this." And so he's a strong administrator, and so his thing is okay. And plus the military helps, and so he's like, "Okay, we got to get on it. We got to get on. We got to get on it." And whereas for me, it's a learning thing for me. That is not, and I will confess, not my strong suit, but with him pushing me, and he's like, he's got the fire under me. He's like, "Hey, we gotta do this." And if every post that you see, if I don't post, some of the posts I do post, but most of everything my husband does it. Michael is on it, and so he is my marketing person. I had someone with my first book who was my marketing person, where I got the radio interviews and uh, the um, the interviews on out of town in Texas, several different states interviews. And so we were able to do that. But for the most part, my husband is one that does the marketing. I mean, he is phenomenal. I thank God for that man of God. I thank God for that man of God. So yeah, if that man say, "Hey, go get me a glass of water in the middle," guess what? April's getting up and she getting that glass of water.
Yes. Hey, I completely understand what you're saying, and that's so beautiful. Your husband actually he became my friend on Facebook, and then
Okay.
he and then he joined the BWW page. So that is so excellent. We're both
Yeah.
um, former military wives, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
We're wives of retired military men,
Yes.
and my husband is the same way. I wrote my first book while he was in Iraq on, doing the tour in
Wow.
Iraq. And he came
Wow.
home and we had just moved to Maryland, and I showed him this book and I'm like, look what I did. And he's going, you wrote a book, while I was away? And I said, yeah, but it's a bucket list thing. It's something I always wanted to do. I'm just going to write it, put it on the shelf. I really had no plans on doing any type of marketing or any of that. And he
Hmm.
he looked at me and he said, oh no, we're going to market this book. We're going to get out there. And we started doing book events and
Yes.
traveling, and it was wonderful. I sold a nice amount of books, and I do give him all the praise for that, because I would have just wrote it, put it on the shelf, and said, "Hey guys, yeah, I wrote a book," you know.
Hmm.
And because of that, because of him, it went much farther. So that is excellent, excellent to know, that you have that kind of strategy, that he's got that marketing strategy going on, that he's pushing you out. And I see some of the videos and I think they're just excellent. And I love what you're doing, and
Thank
continue to do it. And I'm going to bring you back in a couple of weeks to talk about your new book, because you and I both seem to have dropped a book in the middle of COVID. So
you.
very
Yeah.
quickly, I want to just bring that up for those people out there who are like us, who put a book out in the middle of this pandemic. My book released on Valentine's Day, and we were here in New Orleans. We were basically a stay at home less than a month later. And so, a lot of people say, oh, well, everybody's at home, so everybody's going to be reading. But I'm finding that my sales are pretty flat. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
it really, I think people are more reading about race and racism than
Yes.
anything right now than some of the other books. So
Right.
do you have any, anything that you've experienced during this time to, putting out a book in the midst of COVID that you think would be of interest or that could be helpful? One thing I learned was that you need to post your book on your personal page. You need to use your Facebook, access as much as possible, and, get the word out there. But it's hard to move to sell copies in the
Yes.
midst of this pandemic. I don't
Yeah.
know if you're having the same experience, but that's what I'm
It,
seeing.
it, it is for the most part. And I think it's important that when we first, prior to the book coming out, I think what helped me a little bit was the fact that I kept mentioning the book and then
Hmm.
use it as an element of surprise, and then the excitement and building the excitement up. And so you'll notice that every week I mention the book. I mention where they can get it, how they can get it. And then I constantly let them know, hey, if you would like to have a signed copy, inbox me. And so that's been helping. And so, because I know people have been uh, saying that they, doing different things during this time, spending more time with the children,
Hmm.
games, and getting books. And so that's why I love the fact that going to the book groups is so important, knowing what's out there. Because otherwise, if you're not a part of that, you don't know what books are out there. You
Right.
don't know, what's going on. And so I thank God for groups like this where we're able to not only network, but we're finding out what is out there.
Hmm.
And so I think it's important that we mention every chance we get, like you said, mention it on your page and constantly remind them, hey, I have this book, contact me if you this, and this is how you can get the book. So it's a constant thing. And then, like I said, with my husband, constantly saying, hey, babe, we need to do this, and let's do this. And I
Hmm.
think
Yes.
networking with different book, I think that's very helpful. And the fact that things that you're doing in reference to meeting with the authors and
Hmm.
suggesting, different books every week or what have you. I like that.
Well, thank you, because that's what this is all about. When I published my first book and I did finally get into the marketing of things, I realized how tough it can be. And then I
Yeah.
started, when I released the second book, I said, you know what? We need a platform that we can talk about our work on, and we can meet with each other
Yeah.
and connect. And I am so amazed by the caliber of books that I'm seeing on the page.
Mhm.
And the fact that, we're all, people are just writing through so many different feelings, so much pain, and
Yeah.
really going out there and putting their work out, for the world to read it, which is hard. You expose a great deal of yourself when you write a book,
Yes, you do.
and to you have to deal with the consequences of that. You have
Yes.
friends and family who think that you've exposed them, or they may feel a certain way about it, or people like it or people don't like it. They feel like they need to tell you about that, and that's fine. But it is a big, you exposing a great deal, and you can't take it back. Once you
Right.
put it out there, you can't take it back. So
Right.
it's important that we continue to learn and support each other and encourage each other to continue to write. Just,
Yes.
continue to write. So thank you so much, April. This has been dynamic. I've learned so much. I can't wait to finish reading your books. And I can't wait to talk to you about your memoir. So we're going to come back and talk about that. And we'll be sure to post this on the page. And if there's anybody out there who's interested in connecting with April, do you have your website? You want to give it to them, or?
Yes. Officialaprilyoung.com.
Okay,
Yes.
that is so great. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. You be
No,
blessed. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
you too. Take care.
Thank you. All right.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.